Hey everybody, thanks for joining us. We wanted to give you some ideas about how to use like a text source from the Library of Congress in your classroom. So real quick, we picked the source and I want to show you where to find that source. And this is always a great place to start. Click on that teachers button down at there at the bottom of the slider. Go to classroom materials. And then primary source sets, best place to start because it gives you teacher created resources to actually use in the classroom. And the one I used or I chose is from Hawaii. So you see how I just searched in there. I'll open up the Hawaii set, and you see they usually try to get an image, a map, a text set, just about anything you can think that they have for that topic. So we really thought that this resource was a pretty good resource to use. Do you guys want to say a little bit about that?
Yeah, and Kyle, so this, I don't know if we're introducing ourselves. So I'm Peggy O'Neill-Jones with the TPS Western Region, and right below me is Roland Schendel. And so when I look at this source, the first thing that stands out with me is how dense it is. And I mean, when you look at the text, there's very little visual break to it at all. That as a reader, if I looked at that, I would think, oh my goodness, well, what am I plowing into? And then these headlines, debate on annexation of Hawaii and predicts an easy victory. So I'm wondering what that is. But before I do that, I like to look at the context of what's going on around this story. So I think about the ads. And the ads are actually giving me a little more visual break in my eyes, that they're not so dense and pushed together. But now I'm wondering about Admiral Dewey. Who is this guy that he's so important that parents might want to buy an Admiral Dewey suit? And Manila, so that's in there. So that's making me wonder about that. And then down below, when you scroll down, Kyle, you'll see the prices. Those are $2.50 for a child's suit, or a hat for 95 cents. So that has me wondering a lot. So that might be the first thing when looking at this source before diving into the difficult part, is what is it that I can look at that's beginning to give me a little understanding and a little bit of context in which these stories were written and created. Raleigh, you have thoughts?
Yeah, that really made me think, Peggy, in terms of, the busyness of this source, and like, oh my gosh, as one particular learner, I might think, oh my gosh, there's a lot going on there. As another learner, I'm like, there's a lot to be learned there. It depends on the learner and in particular. And really, as a teacher and choosing a text, it becomes a matter of accessibility, supporting text. Like, is this part of a text set? So like, this is the tip of the iceberg, and these 5 other sources and resources become a part of the text set. What scaffolds are included in this to support student accessibility in terms of like strategies? They're fourfold. Is there a 3-2-1 as a part of this? Do we use turn, talk, and listen? And then what kind of space is created for learning about this text and this as a source of information? And what is it based on in terms of purpose? So from a learner's perspective, you're like, what the heck? Why have you given me this? What's the purpose? What's the point? What's the goal of looking at this? And what do you want me to learn? What can I learn? So all those kind of questions and ideas come into play in terms of this text.
I like that. And one other idea, for example, Kyle, if you zoom in on predicts an easy victory, that article over to the right, yeah, predicts an easy victory. So when I start to go in and look at this, that has something to do with San Juan, city not well defended, and the Americans should attack. But when you scroll down into the text, one thought might be, with really difficult text like this, or really dense, text that have a lot of information, especially government documents and things like that. So Raleigh, what do you think about having breaking students up into groups and having each group take a paragraph or so and let them do that deep dive on that paragraph to really understand that paragraph, and then write something or have some summary of what that paragraph is about, so that you bring them all back together, that an article like this about special dispatch to the call in the United States expedition and all of that jazz, that it suddenly becomes far more understanding, easier to get the gist, at least, of what this article is about.
That question gives me goosebumps, Peggy, because essentially it's certainly about invigorating engagement with learners, and then scaffolding in terms of purposeful grouping and regrouping, maybe in pairs, maybe in table groups, however you have your classroom configured, and or how you want to reconfigure that. And essentially, maybe each group is predetermined in in the essence of, like, okay, this group needs some pre-taught vocabulary, so to speak, in terms of the resource or the source that they're experiencing. So we might pre-teach and or visually represent, expedition, neighborhood, Puerto Rico, in terms of the text that they're experiencing, because they need that scaffolding. Another group might need the kind of pre-thinking or the prompting of thinking in terms of some higher level questions that are associated with their reading. Whereas another group might be inspired by how, in light of what we've learned recently in terms of neighborhood and community, what can you take from this text to make sense of what we've learned previously? So absolutely, all that's based on grouping, regrouping, small groups, large groups, table groups, and the like.
Yeah.
Raleigh, I remember we used to use this strategy called save the last word for me. Do you think that would be good on something like this?
Yeah, I mean, with the save the last word for me, it's nothing short of phenomenal in terms of like situating learners in terms of conversation and their roles in speaking and listening. And with save the last word for me, with a resource or a source like this, you have every student get a chance to look at it and kind of time that, give them plenty of space, and then have them turn, talk, and listen as a table group. And each group kind of, each member in the group gives their take on the experience. But the person that poses the question initially, like, oh my gosh, what does this have to do with what we've learned previously? Every other person in the group gets a chance to talk. And then that person that posed the question or the statement gets the last word. So other people are dying to like add to that or respond or add another question or whatever. But that person actually gets the last word, and then it moves on to the next person in the group. So a great way to structure conversation and our manipulation of the roles in speaking and listening in the classroom.
I like that. And, another thing, especially for higher grades, when you zoom out a little bit, Kyle, again, when you look at the big thoughts on this, annexation of Hawaii, easy victory. You look at the date, 1896, I believe it is. Well, look at that. There's like military, there's like Red Cross, so all of that is telling me that there is some military or military effort underway. And even the ads have Admiral Duty and Admiral Dewey. So when I look at the big picture, I wonder, so what's happening in June? What is the date on that? 1896? 1898. Okay. So now what's going on June 1898? And then you look at things like San Juan and Hawaii and what's with the annexation. And then, of course, the larger context of that why would you want Hawaii? Well, it might be a way to refuel on your way to the Panama Canal. Who knows? Why would you want San Juan? Why would you want? So looking at the text, you can do a deep dive on what the texts mean in themselves, but then you can also look at this page and have a pretty good idea of what people were thinking about or worrying about on that particular date.
Yeah, I love that. There's really just no better way to build context than, having students look at a historical newspaper of the time and read about what folks were doing.
Mhm.
One thing I've seen some teachers do is get like a newspaper of, some big events that you're studying, like World War II and World War I or something, and then have them find things not about the war, have them find an obituary, have them find a birthday, have them find, whatever you can think of to help build that context of the time.
Yeah, nice idea.
You know, this kind of reminds me, Kyle, of a great opportunity to um, use the question formulation technique to kind of set the stage for this, or it could be a post assessment kind of opportunity. But in the pre-assessment opportunity, it could be a matter of just posting things like Hawaii, World War, Admiral Dewey, and kind of this like word bank, so to speak, and say, okay, that's your prompt. Create your questions, sort those questions, use those questions to inspire your kind of priming of thinking, so to speak, for the exploration of a text like this. Or in hindsight, at the end of a session, it could be used as a formal post assessment to determine students' learning from experiencing a text like this.
And Raleigh, your perspective on text is that the text is not just words, that all of this is text. Do you want to talk a little bit more about how you view that, or what you consider text to be?
Yeah, unfortunately, I think we think of text as like a textbook traditionally, or text as in written word. But text essentially is like anything that we can experience and take in terms of the language arts. So anything, any receptive form of source. So anything we can view, anything we can hear, anything we can read are forms of text. So a cartoon is text. A book is a text, or a billboard is text, or one of our favorite songs is text, essentially. So how do we incorporate all those into inspiring learners and helping them think wildly and diversely and broadly about the world that they're a part of, and drawing conclusions that make them plausible kind of, figures in society, so to speak, actionable and purposeful decision makers.
And I really like that. When you look at this, there's not a square inch on this newspaper that's not text as the way that you describe it. Even the ads, even the visuals, and all of that, and that really carries through to today. When you're bombarded with information, that however you receive the information, it's a textual source.
Yeah, I was just thinking about like media literacy and how this can fall into that. And this is a mixed media a piece, right? We have traditional text, and then we also have images, so we can understand not just like what was going on in the context and the historical aspect of it, but also the rhetorical aspect too. Predicts an easy victory. We can analyze some of the language used in the newspaper to see kind of how they were thinking about different groups of people they're talking about.
Kyle, I love your connection to the classroom, and then this like tendril speaking to historical context and making sense of where we've come from and where we're headed. And as a classroom teacher, we're constantly like bombarded with, okay, I've got 10 minutes to prepare for this and finalize my preparation. How can this be practical? And all of a sudden we think of text broadly in terms of visual, auditory, and written. And here we have visual and written, but I'm missing the auditory. So that could be the impetus for saying, okay, students, now you need to reach out to the LOC collection and find an auditory text that connects to this in a meaningful way. and or in social media, so to speak. So we could push them to the Library of Congress, and or we could push them out into their worlds and help them make sense of this in meaningful ways that are purposeful to them through pop culture. So yeah, don't feel like you have to do everything yourselves as classroom teachers. Take steps to get students there and then demand of them. Don't do everything for students, and never work harder than your students.
Great advice.
With that, any other ideas on this source?
It's just a rich source. So many ways to go. So, and of course, the library has the whole Chronicling America and lots of sources just like this.
Yeah, one thing I will say about these Chronicling America sources, I just love this tool up here at the top. So if you zoom in on, I just want to get this Admiral Dewey part, I can clip it and just get a picture of that, and that's it. So I can only use this in the class. It makes it a lot easier to print things.
Yeah, and another way to just take parts of the newspaper and have students look at these parts before you bring it all together.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like the short pants with buttons. We need to return to that.
We do.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for joining us, everybody.
Yeah.
I hope you enjoy the rest of Teacher Librarian Day.